All right, good morning. Morning. How's everyone doing? Karibuni sana. Hope you guys are well. Good to see you here in the Zoom meeting, and of course, guys joining us on YouTube. Karibuni sana. Welcome back to our channel. John Bogo is my name. I'm a trader with Afriforex. Afriforex is a trading unit. It's not a one-man show. You've been seeing Mitch a lot this week. Today he is still here, but he is working in the back office. So in case you do have any questions, feel free to ask them both on the Q&A section and also on the chat box. Mitch will be getting back to you. But I will also be looking at the questions more specifically in the Q&A section towards the tail end of this webinar. But as always, you don't really need to wait until the very end. You still can ask your questions even as the webinar does end up progressing on. So we're going to jump straight into it, and apologies for starting off a couple of minutes late. I know we've been apologizing a lot in terms of starting the webinars late, but it's something that's beyond our control. Fundamentals have been coming out at 9, and we always need to give you the right information. So that's the reason why the webinars have been late, but we thank you so much for bearing with us. So you can see the watch list right there in comparison what we did end up having yesterday. You can see a couple of changes, so feel free to take note of that. So we will be looking at the currency pairs that we did have yesterday that unfortunately did not make it onto our watch list. So we'll start off by doing a recap of those, look at a couple of screenshots we did end up getting. Then after that, we look at what the situation does look like on the charts today. So the first one, the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. For this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. And you can see also an illustration of what we're expecting in terms of the pullback, possibly maybe looking for buy somewhere within here in the morning. When we're looking at the charts price or somewhere within this region right here, you can see the market pulled around within this region. This was during the London session. During the US session, the market pulled back. Unfortunately, couldn't come back in all the way to within here. But generally, you can see that the market was more or less holding within this region. It's only today, during the Asian session, that the market has decided to start going to the upside. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that happening yesterday. It could have been a bit tricky to end up catching that buy. But unfortunately, not really a currency pair that we're going to be watching out for today. So the next one, the euro against the Canadian dollar. For this one, yesterday, also trying to see whether we could get some buys. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out, and also an illustration of what possibly to end up expecting. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the strength on the euro coming in, and also the weakness on the Canadian dollar coming in yesterday. And unfortunately, you can see that the market broke this region to the downside. And unfortunately, couldn't go to the upside of this region. And you can see that at 3, the market did actually push itself off this region quite aggressively to the downside. And of course, once the market broke the reddest and now to the downside, at that point in time, that currency pair was off our pace. So the next one, the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. For this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to possibly end up expecting. You can see in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. The market did pull back in within this region, and you can see that at 3, price was back in within this buyer's region, which is where we did expect to see some sort of a reaction. Although, unfortunately, on the first attempt, you can see that the market couldn't make it past this region to the upside. And you can see that it seemed like it broke to the upside, but the sellers did actually retaliate quite aggressively. So that's the reason why we always point out, make sure that you always do some really good money management when you get some trades, because you can imagine getting a buy here, going all the way high up there, and the market turns and brings you back all the way till within your entry. And you see at that point in time, you wouldn't even be sure whether the market could actually end up going to the upside or maybe continue coming down. So just make sure that you do some good money management. But you can see that there were more or less like 2 buying opportunities during the US session for that one. But unfortunately for us, for today, not really a currency pair that we'll be watching out for. So the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. For this one, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can clearly see the 3 regions right there that Mitch had pointed out, also an illustration of what to expect. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. So we did want to possibly see a pullback coming in within this region right here. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that. You can see that the market continued to push to the upside, even breaking above this region during the US session. But the buyers were really looking quite weak. At that point in time, you can see that they really struggled to push the market to the upside. And you can see that the pullback is just now coming back in within this region. But unfortunately, not really a currency pair that we will be trying to see whether we can get some opportunities. The next one, this is the euro against the New Zealand dollar. For this one, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities as well. And you can see the three areas right there that had been pointed out. In the morning, when you're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this area right here. You can see that during the London session, the big boys were nowhere to be seen. The market came back in. We were possibly expecting to see some sort of a big buyer coming in within here. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that, and the market pulled back in all the way back in within this region right here. And you can see that this was more or less during the New York Stock Exchange Open. Even if you did get buys here, you can see that you did need to exercise a bit of patience. The big buyers didn't quite show up like would have really expected, within this region. And you can see that they couldn't even get as high up as within this region right here. You can see that the market has to calm down lower. Could be something possibly to do with the NZDs as well. They've been showing quite a lot of strength, especially during the Asian session today. So possibly could be something that could end up showing, across, all the NZD pairs maybe, throughout the whole day. So unfortunately, not really a currency pair that we'll be trying to see whether we can end up getting some buys. That's the euro against the New Zealand dollar. So the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. For this one, we're trying to see whether we could get some sells. You can see the three areas that had been pointed out. Also some sort of an illustration of what to expect. The market was somewhere here. We did want to see a big seller coming in. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite get that. And you can see that the market broke to the upside, came back in quite aggressively. But you can see that getting the sells within this region right here was a bit tricky because the market kept coming back into the upside and breaking above here. Even if you're timing the sell, maybe after the market came to the downside like this, on the way back, you can see that it still broke to the upside. Maybe the truest scenario somewhere maybe within this region right here. But nonetheless, you can see that there were some selling opportunities, though a bit tricky to end up grabbing, and unfortunately, not really a currency pair that we'll be watching out for today. So the next one, the Great British Pound against the Australian dollar. For this one, we're trying to see whether we could get sells. Can see the three areas and an illustration of what we were expecting. The sellers had come down during the Asian session. Then after that, it's like they disappeared the rest of the day. They were nowhere to be seen. And you can see that the market really fought within this region before moving to the upside. And actually breaking to the upside, looks like it's holding above that region. Unfortunately, not really a currency pair that we'll be trying to see whether we could get any trades today. Unfortunately, we couldn't get any yesterday as well. So the next one, this is the euro against the Great British Pound. For this one, we're trying to see whether we could get some buys. You can see the three regions right there that had been pointed out, and also an illustration. We did want to see some big boy buyers coming in within here. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that. And you can see that the market broke to the downside, came in, even broke this region to the downside. And unfortunately, when that happened, then unfortunately, there was no trade for us on the euro against the Great British Pound. So last but not least, we do have the Great British Pound against the US dollar for review. So for this one, can see the three areas and also what we're expecting. The market was somewhere here. Wanted to see what was going to happen when the market tapped back in, within this region, right? You can see that during the London session, the market first came back into the downside, then bounced off this area, came in, and you can see that around 3, that's when the market did actually end up making quite an aggressive move. There were quite a lot of USD fundamentals that came out yesterday, and of course, I'm sure that you guys have seen that quite a number of USD pairs have really moved a lot, and also things that are pegged to the USD, like the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, also gold and silver, have really moved a lot. So for this one, can also see that it wasn't left behind. The market really came down quite fast. And of course, definitely did need to manage your trade, somewhere within here or somewhere within here. You can see that even if the market came down quite aggressively, you can see that the turnaround was also quite aggressive. Something that we've seen also on the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. And that just goes out to remind guys that managing your trades is extremely important. So that's pretty much it in terms of the currency pairs that we did have yesterday that unfortunately did not make it to our watch list today. So we can end up jumping onto a couple of screenshots or a lot of screenshots that we did get. We're really happy to see guys trading and guys killing it on the chart. So we'll start off with this one from Beatrice. This is on oil. So I can see that we did get a buying opportunity on this one. Somewhere down within here, I can see that your stop loss is already above your point of entry and just behind that buyer who's pushing the market to the upside, which is good. And I think you're targeting somewhere within this region right here. In terms of where you got the buy, this is good. In terms of money management, also excellent. So this is spectacular. So wonderful job there, Beatrice, and of course, keep up the good work. So we also did get a screenshot from Essie. This is on gold. So I can see that you got a buying opportunity somewhere within this region right here. The market side going to the upside, stop loss already above your point of entry, which is okay. But also considering the fact that the market has just started going to the upside, and we can't quite see an area where maybe the market could come back in terms of a pullback. Possibly end up doing some sort of retest. Maybe unless you had looked at the past and seen that maybe the market had broken an SNR, and maybe you had put your stop loss just below that SNR, then you'd be fine. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. But in terms of the attempt, also not bad. At least you caught it just as it was leaving, somewhere within this region right here. But of course, really happy to see that at least you did get the trade and you did manage it well. So shout out to you for that, SC, and of course, keep up the good work. So we also did get a couple of screenshots from George. George Shage, if you're here, shout out to you as well. If you're watching from wherever, whether on YouTube, hope you're well, but it's good to see your screenshot here. So I can see that you did get the euro against the Japanese yen. So you did get a good buying opportunity down here, just as the market was about to leave off this region right here. Definitely a good region, because you can see that the bars had pushed the market to the upside. So of course, buys within there. Definitely, I know that on entry, maybe your stop loss was down here. When the market started to move to the upside, I can see that your stop loss came in just higher, which is good. And I can see that you're just targeting somewhere within there. So being realistic in terms of expectations, quite good to see that. So shout out to you for that, George. And also, can see that you also did end up getting oil, a buying opportunity down here. If you got it when the market pulled back in within this region, this was really good. Maybe on entry or stop loss, maybe or somewhere there. I'm just thinking. And I can see that you're just targeting the high, which is somewhere within that region, which is quite good. So shout out to you for that, George. Again, of course, keep up the good work. Always happy to see your screenshots. So we also did get some screenshots from Millicent. Millicent, if you're here or if you're watching from YouTube, shout out to you. So I can see that you did get a sell on gold, which was really good. Very good selling opportunity right there. Can see that your stop loss, not yet at break even, but of course, when the market came down all the way to within here, your stop loss could even be somewhere within this area right here. Definitely, just in case the market just ends up pulling back in within any of these levels, for some sort of a retest. But of course, in terms of getting that sell, this was really, really good. So shout out to you for that. Maybe just tightening up the money management, but that was really well done. And I can see that you also did get a sell on silver. Also a very good sell right at the top. Stop loss, not yet at break even, but it could be. At least the market, if it does come back in, possibly could come back in somewhere within this region or maybe somewhere within here. And hopefully, even as you end up bringing your stop loss lower, also making sure that you do manage some of your trade. But that's really well done. So shout out to you for that, Millicent. Good to see that you're still in the game. So last but not least, we did get a screenshot from Mark Ingori. Mark, if you're here or if you're watching from wherever, hope you're well. But good to see that you also did get some very good trading opportunity. And this is on the Dow Jones. So I can't see one trade but two stop losses. So you must have been in on maybe two trades or maybe one from earlier, I don't know, but can't see two stop losses there. But this is really good. Good buy there, stop loss above your point of entry, giving the market enough room, and hopefully did manage your trade when the market came high up within there. But this was really well done. So shout out to you for that, Mark, and of course, everyone else who did end up sending in a screenshot or two. So remember, guys, you can't send in your screenshots, and we're always happy to celebrate your wins. Like we always say, we're not asking you for any money. I mean, we're happy for you guys to make money. We just want to see what you're up to. And remember, it also goes a long way in terms of motivating even other people in terms of trading, just to make and show guys that it's actually doable. It's not impossible. So feel free to send in your screenshots. You might be inspiring someone. You can also end up learning a thing or two from your screenshots, and also helping very many other people also learn a thing or two, because you find that the mistakes that do end up being there cut across so many people. It's not something that's unique to yourself. So our contact details are there on the chat box. Feel free to send them in to us, and also feel free to reach out to us with the same contact details in case of anything. We will try and be of much help and much value to you. So moving on and shifting gears into matters today, you can see the watch list right there. So the Japanese yen and the Swiss franc have been abandoned on the sell side. So we will be mixing and matching them up with the currency pairs on the buy. Then we'll end up looking at the indices and the commodities as we wrap things up. So we're going to start off with the yen pairs. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. So this is a new entrant on our watch list this morning. And you will find that all the yen pairs like we always say, the correlation when it comes to the yen pairs is always top notch. They always end up doing the same thing. So you're going to be seeing this chart nearly 5 times over. So we'll start off with this one and you'll see the same thing with all the rest of the yen pairs. So for this one, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get buying opportunities. You can see the 3 areas right there that we're going to be trying to see whether we can get trades, and also areas where we can manage our trades. Right now, don't really end up looking for the buying opportunities. And as much as the market has come in quite aggressively, stepped in within that region, you can see that the sellers are really struggling within here in terms of pushing the market lower. You can see that the market is not really going lower than this region right here. So in as much as that's the case, still give them the benefit of doubt. You could find that during the London session, the market could come back in. Maybe it might not go too far. You might find that maybe it might just end up coming back in within this region. You can see that there's some sort of a range that's now starting to happen within this region. The only time that we'll possibly be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities will be if the market breaks this region to the upside and hopefully comes back in within this region and hopefully still holds above this area. Then at that point in time, we could possibly end up trying to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. But for now, the best thing is to actually wait. You could get some buys within here, especially for the guys who are really sniper or guys who are cowboys, some ninjas on the charts. And I know that there are very many of you here. You could possibly end up trying to see whether you could get, some buying opportunities within here, even if the market doesn't come back in within these regions. But remember, these are the major levels, because on the 1 hour time frame and the 4 hour time frame, this move going up is something that's visible on those time frames, which means that there are also levels on that time frame that have been broken. And remember that the story and the way the charts actually end up operating is that they are fractals. In as much as you have the story on the 15, it's also part of the story on the 1 hour time frame, also part of the 4 hour time frame, which is part of the daily and the weekly. So if the market has actually broken a level to the upside, there's a possibility it could come back in here for a retest. And that's not something that might be visible on this time frame, but possibly a level that the big boys, the higher time frames are possibly watching out for. So just make sure that you also do watch out for them. This one right here, and also in case the market does come back in within this region, also just make sure that you watch out for that. But a bit of patience is advised. You could find that maybe during the London session, the market could be on the pullback. Maybe the sellers or the big boys in London might actually decide to push the market to the downside. Then maybe during the US session, the market could be within a region, of support to possibly end up, pushing itself to the upside, and the buyers who did actually push the market up yesterday during the US session could come back alive. You could find the markets moving. So just make sure that you really do watch out for that. So the next one, this is the euro against the Japanese yen. More or less a similar story. You can see right now we're within a region of resistance. Let's wait and see if we can get the market breaking this region to the upside. We possibly could get the market breaking above that, comes back in within here and possibly holds. I mean, if we do end up finding the market somewhere within here at around 3, let's say after the market breaks during the London session, then you could possibly try and see whether you could get some buying opportunities there. If not, just make sure you do wait and see whether you could get the market coming back in within there. There's a minor scenario within this region right here. I mean, you could possibly read the story maybe on a smaller time frame, especially maybe on the 3-minute, 1-minute time frame. Because if you're going to be getting the buys here, remember that this problem area still remains. That one is not moving, which means that for you to get some proper risk to reward between these two regions, then that means that your stop loss really needs to be tight. That means that you'll have to go down to maybe the 1-minute and the 3-minute time frame to have your stop somewhere within here. But if you're looking at it on the 15, then you'll definitely still need to watch out for these two regions right here. But I think my best bet would be we could break this region to the upside. This buy will possibly give you lesser issues than this one, because you also could end up getting taken for a ride within that particular region right there. And I'm very sure most of you, that's not really what you want. You want a trade whereby the market really moves to the upside quite well or to the downside quite well, not really something that just holds within that region. So just make sure that in case you do hit the trade somewhere within there, then just know that you could also be signing up to be taken on some sort of an emotional roller coaster. So just make sure that you have that at the back of your mind. So the next one, this is the US dollar against the Japanese yen. So you can see similar situation, good correlation. The charts look exactly similar. They're quite identical. This one is not yet at the top, but it did tap there, came back. And this one almost looks similar to the euro against the Japanese yen. The Australian dollar against the Japanese yen is high up there, but nonetheless, you can still see this sort of hold, that's happening within here. So I'll put that line right there. Let's see if we can get the market maybe coming back in somewhere within here. This level looks like it's floating in the middle of nowhere. But remember, like I pointed out, it's based on the higher time frame. You could find that maybe there's a possibility that the market could actually come back in within here to push itself, off this area right here. So we will be waiting to see what happens within there. But of course, remember, in case the market breaks above that, then definitely you could find some really good conservative buys there. And maybe these buyers could possibly end up coming back alive. So just make sure that you watch out for that. The red SNR as well, bit of a long shot, but definitely you can't find the market coming back in within that region. If it does, then at least we will be ready for it. So the next one is the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. For this one yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. And in the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. And unfortunately, we just couldn't get the sellers showing up. In as much as we were within a seller's region, but you can see that the sellers didn't quite show up within this area. The market broke to the upside, couldn't come back in. And unfortunately, you can see that at 3, the market did actually push itself off that region to the upside. And at that point in time, this currency pair did actually end up falling off our watch list. But if you end up looking at it today, it's identical to the rest of the yen pairs. So remember, like I pointed out, it would end up starting to feel like we're looking at the same chart over and over again. But the good thing about it is the yen pairs, due to the correlation that they normally do have, if you're really good at looking at correlation, you could actually end up getting a handful of pips, just by using correlation. You look at one, see what happens, possibly could end up getting a good number of trading opportunities. Like, for example, today we're looking for buying opportunities. You could get a handful of buys, just by using correlation. But also one thing we always say is you also need to be careful, because remember, in case the correlation goes against you, things would be good if the correlation works in your favor. But also remember, things can also go south. And if things go south on all of them and you're in on all of them, then it might not end up being a very good day for you. So just make sure that you also do watch out for your risk. So for this one, similar situation with the rest of the ones that we've looked at, some sort of a range that's happening within there. This one is at the top. Let's see if we can get the market breaking to the upside. If not, let's see if we can get the market coming in somewhere as close as possible within here. Definitely you could find some small buys within here, like I pointed out on the rest of the yens. But of course, the best buys are definitely hiding somewhere within this region right here. So in case the market does end up showing up within that region, I'll definitely be trying to see whether we can get some sort of buyers coming in to potentially push that market to the upside. So the next one, this is the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could get sells. You can clearly see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. And you can see in the morning, price was somewhere here. And unfortunately, we just couldn't get the sellers showing up. This one is similar to the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen, whereby the sellers didn't quite show up within this region. The market broke to the upside, held above this region right here. And you can see that at 3, the market actually pushed itself off that region to the upside. So for this one, for today, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So these are the 3 regions that we're going to be watching out for. This one already seems like it's broken to the upside. So this one could possibly be the leading pair, considering the fact that it's already gone above this region to the upside. Let's see what happens when the market pulls back in within this region right here. So you could find that, right now the sellers are coming in quite slow, which is good. So if they can continue coming in slow, maybe even attempt to come in, maybe the market might need to retest somewhere within this region right here, come to the upside and hold above that region there. If you find the market somewhere within here at 3, you could possibly give it a shot in terms of the buy. The only problem is that you'll definitely have to watch out for this region right here. But you also never know if the market could also come back in all the way to within this region right here. So definitely be watching out for that area. But there's also this region right here where you can see that the market has actually pushed itself off this region to the upside. So just make sure that you have this region. This one is a minor region. Remember the ones that we highlight, the 2 yellow and the red, those ones are more major levels. The short blue line, this one is more like a minor level. It doesn't mean that it's a level that you should overlook, but you'll find that there's a possibility in case the market can't come back in all the way to within here, then at least you can also end up being ready for this region right here. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But let's see what happens. And so these are definitely showing a lot of strength during the Asian session. Let's see if that strength is going to be showing throughout the whole day today. So let's wait and see what happens. So last but not least, CAD yen. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the 3 regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this region right here. So we wanted to see the market come up slowly. It did, but unfortunately, the sellers just couldn't show up at all. And you can't see that at 3, the market just took off to the upside, just like we've seen with the rest of the yen pairs. So for this one, similar story with the rest of the yens. Can't see the 3 areas right there. We do have a major area right there where we possibly do expect maybe the market could possibly end up coming back until. And last but not least, we do have the aggressive area somewhere within this region right here. So let's see what happens with this one. Definitely a minus SNR within this region right here, but let's hope that the market comes in, somewhere as close as possible within here. And remember, if you see something on 1 yen, make sure that you also do have a look at the rest of the yen news events, the rest of the yen currency pairs, just to see what's also happening on that front. If it's something that's across all the yen pairs, if it's something that's happening on, let's say, NZD, and you're not seeing something of the rest of the yens, then that could mean that maybe it's something to do with the NZDs, and you could possibly maybe look and see if NZDs also have some good correlation. You could possibly end up getting ready to try and jump in on them. So that's pretty much it for the yen pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the CHF pairs, which are going to be the last currency pairs that we're going to be looking at. So for these ones, we're going to start off with the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. This is a new entrant on our watch list. So for this one, these are the 3 areas we will be watching out for. So we do have that region right there at the top. So that means that in terms of looking for the buys, let's wait and see if we can get the market breaking above that region to the upside. If it does, then at least we could try and see whether we could get some conservative buying opportunities within this area, but also give the market the benefit of doubt. You could find that maybe during the London session, the market could come back in. There's a match somewhere within here. But let's hope that we get somewhere as close as possible within this region right here. If that happens, then you could find that some good buying opportunities off this region right here. So definitely be watching out to see what happens on that one. Remembering that in case the market comes in low and breaks the red SNR to the downside, then unfortunately at that point in time, there will be no trade for us. So moving on into the next one. This is the euro against the Swiss franc, also a new entrant on our watch list. We're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buys. Hopefully you can end up taking note of those 3 areas. Also for this one, a lot of patience will be needed. Let's see if we can get the market coming in as close as possible within this area right here. And definitely if that happens, then we could try and see whether we could get some buying opportunities within this region. If not, if the market breaks above this region to the upside, and we actually end up getting a hold and a nice strong breach to the upside. Because remember, if the market just breaks and just holds above this region, just sits on this level right here, that might not really be a good sign. We need something strong, whereby we see, visually that the big boys are back. That's what we need. And then a nice slow pullback coming back in within here for us to look for the buys. If the market just breaks and holds above here, that could easily be a trap for you. So just make sure that you don't really end up falling for that. Remember, the big boys don't really want you to make money. So they'll lay all sorts of traps to make sure that they eat your money. Remember that the small fish are the big fish, and they're always looking out to take our money. So just make sure that you don't really end up falling for their tricks and their games. So moving on into the next one, this is the US dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, we're also going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. You can see the 3 areas right there. Right now, the market is pulling back nice and easy, which is good. Right now, we're back in within this sort of buyer's region, within this area right here. You could find that maybe you could find some buys happening off this area right here, but you really need to be a sniper in terms of getting the buys here. Depending on what happens within this area right here, because if you end up having your stops within here, you see at that point in time, the risk to reward just coming up within here will end up making sense. But if you end up having your stops too wide, then you see just taking that buy might not really end up making much sense, because you'll be getting the short end of the stick. So it might not really end up being worth it. It's either better to wait for the market to break above this region to the upside, and then maybe after that, maybe you could look for the buying opportunity to come up and challenge, that seller who's sitting somewhere within that region there. But even if you do end up taking the buys here, let's say based on how you end up reading the story on the smaller time frame. You could look for the buys there. Just make sure you manage there. Maybe if it breaks to the upside, you could add another trade there to possibly try and see whether you could actually break this region to the upside. But hopefully, let's see if we can get the market coming back in somewhere as close as possible within here. Because if we get the buy off here, taking off to the upside, then the risk to reward on that particular trade will definitely be worth it. Watch out for the red SNR at the bottom as well. Of course, in case the market comes in all the way down to within there, because it can. I'm sure you guys have seen those scenarios happen on the charts time and time again. In case that happens, then just make sure that you're also ready for that. So the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, trying to see whether we could get some selling opportunities. Unfortunately, the Great British Pound pairs yesterday were not really showing that weakness that we wanted to see. And you can see that also for this one, the market was backing within some sort of a seller's region. We were really expecting, to possibly wait and see if we could get a sign of the big sellers showing up and a struggle before we look for the sells. But you can see that the buyers continued pushing to the upside. The sellers were nowhere to be seen. And during the US session, the market completely took off to the upside. So for this one, for today, these are the three areas we'll be watching out for. So let me take out that level. So right now we're within the conservative area. We do need to see whether the market can break that region to the upside. In as much as the sellers have not really showed up since yesterday, doesn't mean that they can't show up. So let's give them the benefit of doubt. You could find that maybe during the London session, the market could be on the pullback phase, could come back in within this region right here. And after that, you could find that maybe during the US session at 3, price could be back in within here for the good buying opportunity. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But of course, since we're giving the sellers the benefit of doubt and we're not taking the buys, the best time to look for the buys would be after the market. If it does end up breaking above this region to the upside, comes back in within this region, then at that point in time, we could look for the buys. You could find that maybe for the market to do this, it might take the whole of the London session, and at 3, that's when the market could be back in within here. So just make sure that you do watch out for those 3 areas. And of course, remember to watch out for the times, like we always point out. We do have 10, which is the London market open. We do have 3, which is the US session open, and 4:30, which is the New York Stock Exchange open. So you could find some good moves happening at those times. And also for NZDs, I've never really found out why they always move at around 1, but you could also end up watching out for that time and try and see whether you could get maybe some NZD trades at around 1 p.m. our time. So moving on into the next one, this is NZD-CHF. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can't see the 3 regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. And in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. So of course, we're expecting price to come back in within here. It did. Fortunately, there was nothing in terms of the sellers showing up within that area. You can see that the market just came back in within that region, broke to the upside, and continued moving north. There was really nothing to tell us to look for sales. So unfortunately for us on this one, there were no selling opportunities yesterday. So moving into today, we're going to be trying to see whether we can go the other way. You can't see the NZDs, just like we've seen on the others. The strength coming in during the Asian session. Market is back in within some sort of a seller's region. Not really a good time to look for the sells. So let's wait and see if we can get the pullback coming in. There's a possibility the pullback could come in all the way till that region right there. And you could find that if in case that does end up happening, then we could try and see whether we could get some buying opportunities within this area right here. You could find that during the London session, price could be coming down. Then at 3, 4:30, price could be here for the buy. Or in case that doesn't end up happening within that area, then we'll have to wait and see whether we could get the market coming back in within this region right here. So let's wait and see whether that could happen. But also remember, there are also quite a number of minor SNRs within here. So in case the market bounces off any of these ones, unless you're a real sniper and you actually end up getting the market somewhere within here, maybe looking at a smaller time frame to get some proper risk to reward. Because remember, the top, which is the ceiling, somewhere within here still remains. So it's up to you to try and figure out if you can get some proper risk to reward within here, which to some extent might actually end up being better to actually sit on the sidelines, wait and see if the market can actually break above this region to the upside for you to look for your buying opportunities. So let's see how much further the market can get. Of course, the further it gets away from that region to the downside, the better for us. The closer it gets within this region, the better for us. But for as long as it's somewhere within here, it might end up being a bit tricky. So just make sure that you have that at the back of your mind. So last but not least, in terms of the currency pairs, we do have the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, also yesterday we did have it, but yesterday we're trying to see whether we could get some selling opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that had been pointed out. Of course, we were waiting to see if we could get the sellers showing up. The buyers were really not quite there, which was really good, but unfortunately the sellers just couldn't show up, and you can see that the market took off to the upside quite aggressively during the US session. So for this one, we're going to be going the other way. So today we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. Hopefully you can end up taking note of those three areas right there, and you can see that the market is pulling back in within this region, which is good. Let's see how much closer it can get within here. Hopefully if we get a sign of the big boys showing up, and the big bars showing up just like they did yesterday, there's a high probability that they will be trying to attempt to break their previous record, which is somewhere within this area or somewhere within there. So in case that happens, and of course if the market pulls back in within here and we read everything we need to see within this area right here, then definitely I will be looking for a buying opportunity right there. So hopefully you can end up taking note of that. Remember the red SNR at the bottom, that's the last area where we will be trying to see whether we can get our aggressive buying opportunities. In case the market breaks and holds below that region to the downside, then unfortunately for us at that point in time, there will be no trade for us. So that's pretty much it in terms of the currency pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the indices and the commodities. So we'll start off with the NAS 100. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative, somewhere within here. In the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this area right here. And you can see that the market came back in quite well. And you can see that during the US session, the market was back in within here. You can see a side of the big bars showing up right there, with these two candles coming up, and after that you can see the struggle of the sellers, and after that you can see that the market really took off to the upside quite aggressively, and you can see that even moving into today the market is still inching up further and further. So for this one, we're still going to be trying to see whether we can get buys. Remember, when it comes to the indices and the commodities, we end up being fully technical, in as much as the fundamentals do end up playing a part, but we do end up following the story. So for this one, for as long as we're holding above this red SNR, then the bars should be to look for buying opportunities. It's only when the market breaks and holds beneath this region right here that we'll end up starting to look for those selling opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of that. Right now, the market has just broken above this region to the upside. It doesn't look like the most convincing of breaches. You could easily find that the market could easily end up maybe coming back in within here, but hopefully we see more of the story within this region, especially if the market attempts to break to the downside, and maybe the big buyers do actually end up showing up. Then at that point in time, maybe we could try and see whether we could get the buying opportunities. But right now, since the market is just breaking to the upside, we're not quite sure what could happen. You could easily find that in case the market does end up coming back in quite aggressively and actually goes within here, then you'll have to be on standby, because you don't know if the market could come back in within any of these levels right here. But of course, if it does come back in within here and we get a slowdown, of the sellers within here and the buyers start to show up, then at that point in time, we could look for the buying opportunities, somewhere within this region right here. And you could find that maybe for the market to do all this, it might actually end up taking the whole of the London session, and maybe by 3 o'clock, that's when it will be ready to actually end up giving you a buying opportunity. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. In case that does end up happening, then at least just make sure that you're ready for it. Remember that the market can also come back in all the way till within there. Considering the fact that the break and how far the market moved yesterday is quite significant. It's something that's visible even on the other time frames, which means that even the pullbacks can also end up being quite deep based on the other time frames. So you also need to make sure that it's not impossible that the market can actually pull back in all that way. So just make sure that you have trade with an open mind. So moving on into the next one, this is the Dow Jones. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out, and also an illustration of what to expect. In the morning, the market was somewhere within here. It did break and seemed to have held within here. You can see that the market attempted to come to the downside. Then after that, the buyers showed up. And this is exactly what I was talking about on the NAS 100, whereby it's just broken this region to the upside, but you might find that maybe the market might attempt to come to the downside. If it does that and the buyers do actually end up showing up at that point in time, at least if you end up jumping in on that buy, you're much better off. So for this one, you can't see that it did do that. Unfortunately, the market couldn't come back in within these regions right here, but you can see that the market really took off to the upside quite aggressively. And of course, moving into the Asian session, it's still moving up inch by inch. So for this one, let's see what happens. Don't look for the buying opportunities right now. We're more or less so close within some sort of a seller's region at the top right there. The sellers have reacted off here before. I know it doesn't seem like the market has stopped there, but if you end up going up a higher time frame, if you end up looking at this region, you'll see that there's definitely an SNR within this region, and maybe there's a possibility the market could just have come back all the way, just to end up tapping that region right there. And since, you should never be trading like some sort of a prophet. You don't know what's going to happen. Just read the facts on the charts and just make sure that you act accordingly. So as far as we know, this region right here, this is an area where you could find a reaction. Let's see if we can get some sort of a reaction. In case we don't and the market breaks above this region to the upside, then at that point in time, then we could try and see whether we could get, some buying opportunities somewhere within here. But of course, could find that maybe that might need the London session to actually end up, playing out really well before you actually end up getting that trade. But also remember, in case the sellers do react, we do have these regions right here. If they do, then we'll be trying to see whether we can get the buying opportunities either within here or maybe somewhere within this region right here. So just make sure that you watch out for that. Remember, the indices and the commodities, they are pegged to the USD, which means that in case you don't really see them moving a lot during the London session, then definitely that means that you just have to end up waiting for the US session to see what happens. Maybe from around 3:30, 4:30, those times, you could find that that's when the markets could actually end up making a move. So moving on into the next one, this is silver. For silver yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. In the morning when we're looking at the charts, so at around this time yesterday, price was somewhere within this area here. So you can see that at around 9, going into 10, price was just talking or just coming so close within this region. You wouldn't really have known what to expect. The market seemed to have broken, held within here, went to the upside, came back in. And you can see that from around 3, 4:30 or thereabout, that's when the market came back in within here to actually end up pushing itself off this region to the upside again. And of course, this is also a good reason why patience is key. You can imagine the guys who are chasing buys when the market was high up there. All those guys were kicked out very fast. When the market pulled back in within here, came back in, then maybe at this point in time, maybe they were looking for sells, thinking that the market was going to come down. And after that, the market went up, possibly ended up getting stopped out again. Then the market came back in for a retest, after it broke above this region to the upside, came back in for a retest. Maybe at that point in time, they were already looking for sells again. And, it's very important to actually stick to the plan because the markets will definitely throw all sorts of nonsense at you, but you definitely need to make sure that you keep your mind and your eyes on the ball. So for this one for today, we're going to be trying to see whether we still can get some buys. So those are the three areas. We have adjusted them accordingly. So let's see what happens. Right now, the market looks like it's going to the upside, which is good. But remember, don't chase buys. If you do, then you could end up coming into some head-on collision with this region right here. And you could find that the market could actually end up pulling back into the downside. The best area to look for the buy is still within here. So don't chase the buys and don't let FOMO get you. I know that sometimes based on emotions, people normally end up getting the fear of missing out, and you're seeing that this market is leaving and it's leaving without you. It's not really left. The market just went to the upside. It bounced off this region the first time. Doesn't mean that you can't come back in within here. And right now, this is not a good area for you to look for yourselves. For your buys, because you could find that the market could still come back in within this region right here, and maybe even give you a much better price. Maybe even come back in within this region properly, even more than it did the previous time. So you just need to be patient. If the market breaks above this region to the upside and actually holds within here, for the guys who are really good at trading and the snipers, you can possibly end up getting a buying opportunity here to come up. But you really need to make sure that you watch out for your stop loss, because you can't have your stop loss all the way down here targeting here. you're possibly better off waiting for the market to maybe break above this range to the upside, and you might get a proper risk to reward to the upside of that region going up. So let's see what happens. But right now, you could find that SNR, maybe when the market broke to the downside, this is the retest of it. And of course, if you hit the buy there, then I'm sure the sellers who are sitting there will more than be happy to do business with you and take your money. So just make sure that you don't actually end up jumping into that buy right there. So last but not least, we do have gold. Now for gold, yesterday, the buyers supposed to look for buying opportunities. It's good to see some people got the sales and they came out alive, which was really good. And of course, you can see the 3 areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. Some sort of a seller's region. We didn't know what the sellers were going to do within here. The buyers went to the upside. As much as the market seemed like it broke to the upside, pulled back in, went, but it couldn't go all the way till within there. The sellers did push this market quite aggressively to the downside, but you can see that the buyers within this region still did end up containing them. You can see that after that, the market came back in, came to the upside, could have been a buy, just needed to be a bit patient. You can see that at around 4:30 or thereabout, although you did need to read this on a smaller time frame. The market came back in off this region right here after the sellers did attempt to come down low. And you can see that right now the market seems to be in some sort of a fight within this region right here. So for today, the levels are the same. This one hasn't had much of a change. Of course, in as much as the market has moved, but it's not really moved fine beyond the areas that we were watching out for yesterday. So those are the same 3 areas. Right now, don't look for the buying opportunities. The market is more or less back in within the same area where it was yesterday. So it's done a full cycle, but it's still back in within this region right here. So we do need to see the market break above here to the upside. If we can possibly end up getting that, and we end up getting the market coming back in within here, nice and slow, then at that point in time, we'll definitely be looking to see whether you could get some buying opportunities there. But right now, give those sellers the benefit of doubt. You never know what could happen. There are so many minor scenarios in between where you could find the market coming back in. But of course, the closer it gets, within this region right here, the better for us. For as long as it can actually end up holding, above this region right here, then at that point in time, we could possibly try and see whether we could get some buys within here. You could find that, maybe during the London session, the market could be on the pullback, maybe come back in within this region. Then after that, could find that maybe at that point in time, the market could go to the upside. So just make sure that you watch out for that. This one is also quite interesting. I mean, if you end up looking at it on the bigger time frame, you'll end up seeing that there was this region right here where the buyers went up. There did start to seem like some sort of a hold was happening within here. The sellers did actually end up showing up quite aggressively off this region, challenging those buyers. These buyers right here are still holding the market. And for that reason, that's why we're still trying to see whether we can get buys, or the bias is to actually make sure that we're going to be looking for those buying opportunities. But there's a possibility you could find maybe some turnaround could be coming in. But for us, for as long as we're holding above here, we should be looking for the buys. It's only when the market breaks beneath this region to the downside, maybe that point in time we'll start to look for selling opportunities. But so far, the buyers seem to be containing the sellers, within this region right here. So just make sure that you also have that the back of your mind, the bigger picture of what's happening on gold. But let's see what happens today. And hopefully you guys have taken note of that and everything else that we have discussed today. So let me look at some questions on the Q&A to see if there are any. So I see Elijah there. Good to see you saying hello. What is the effect on positive USD news on the WS30, which is the Dow Jones? So for the Dow Jones, of course, it being pegged to the USD, definitely there are effects that normally end up happening when news events are there. Normally what you end up finding is that if USD news are going to be coming out positive, you possibly end up finding that I think the Dow Jones should be possibly coming down, which I think should be more or less almost similar to what happens, I think, on gold and on silver, if I'm not wrong. So I think to some extent that's what you could possibly end up having. But mostly also, most of the time what you end up finding, and that's the reason why we end up actually not really looking at the technicals and trying to interpret news and put that with gold, silver, the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq, is because you find that, yeah, the news events will come out. Let's say, for example, positive, and we've seen this so many times. Let's say positive news events come out, let's say for gold. You find that maybe you're expecting that the market should be coming down, but you find that maybe the market could possibly end up spiking, maybe just going to strategic levels, because that's what normally the market tends to do, to possibly just end up using that news event, go to some strategic levels, tap those areas, then after that still resume with the story based on the technicals. So that's the same thing that we've also witnessed on the indices. I know we're still new in terms of trading the indices, but we're definitely getting the hang of them. But we've also seen that happening a lot on them as well. So you will find that, yeah, the news events will come in, the markets will definitely move, because I mean, the news events cannot be ignored, especially the high impact news events. They cannot be ignored. You find that the markets will definitely move, but you find that maybe the markets use those news events to actually end up just going to strategic levels, tapping those areas. Then after that, the story just resumes exactly the same way. So I hope that answers your question, but we'll definitely end up doing a lot more analysis on them, because, you know, as we're trading them day by day, we are starting to realize more and more things about them. I definitely can also see that Mitch has definitely given his 2 cents on that as well, which is really good. So I'm not seeing any more questions, which is perfectly fine. Then I guess that everything else is perfectly clear, which is good. So with that, I guess that's pretty much it from me and from us. I want to thank guys so much for making the time to be here with us. And as much as we did end up starting off a couple of minutes late, but at least we've still been able to finish off just in time for the London session, which is good. So I want to wish everyone a beautiful day on the charts and in everything else that you're going to be doing today. I also do have a wedding to jump off to. Hopefully things are going to be good, though the sun is not out, but I hope on the charts things are going to be good and it's going to be sunny as hell. But wishing guys a beautiful day and of course a beautiful weekend. Hopefully we will end up seeing you guys on Monday morning at 9 a.m. in the morning. So with that, happy trading guys. Bye for now. May the good be with you and God bless.